The next person we have is Mayor Bianca Motley Broom. Let me find my, this was a wonderful ad. She's been out doing some wonderful things for the constituency, and we got lucky to get you on here today, and I think that's really awesome. And I thank you so much for taking the time to come in and share your experiences. May I give you the wonderful background in relation to Mayor Motley Broom. So we've got Bianca Motley Broom was sworn in as the 27th mayor of College Park in Georgia in January of 2020. In her role as mayor, she serves as the chief executive of College Park in a city of nearly 15,000 residents with an annual budget of almost $150 million. The city supports a thriving entrepreneurial community, has over 3,000 businesses in 11 square miles, including the headquarters of Chick-fil-A, portions of the world's busiest airports, it's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, are all within the city limits. Mayor Motley Broom also serves as the third vice president of the Georgia Municipal Association and is member of GMA Board of Directors, Executive Committee, the Legislative Policy Council, and the Federal Policy Council. Mayor Motley Broom earned her bachelor's degree in public policy studies and religion from Duke University, and her JD from Washington University in Atlanta, and her MBA with honors from Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. Without further ado, I'd like to hand the microphone to you, Mayor Motley Broom. It's all yours.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the invitation. And let me just say that it's Washington University School of Law in St. Louis. So there's no confusion. There's no Washington University in Atlanta. So
okay, got you.
We haven't started a new school. But
check on that. Thank you.
I am thrilled to be here with you this evening. And again, I appreciate the invitation to talk about such an important topic for all of our communities. I say all the time in College Park that we are building the community that we deserve. In our city, we've got about 75% of our residents that are renters. So it has been a concentrated effort on the council's behalf to try to move in a direction from a policy perspective that allows us to provide pathways to home ownership. Statewide, about 64% of people are in owner-occupied housing units. So in College Park, it's basically almost a complete reversal of what we see statewide. And there are a lot of different reasons for that, but we have a lot of concentrated multifamily housing, especially on the south side of our city. But we have also the fourth largest historic district in the state with some of the housing at our northern end. So there are broader opportunities for home ownership, and within our 11 square miles, we also have the potential for additional housing, but we've got to be careful with that. We actually had a proposal that we've been working on for a number of years, and just as we were getting to the finish line with it, the developer said, we'd like to do all build to rent, when the anticipation was that a majority of it was going to be owner occupied housing. And there were a number of things that happened, but ultimately that deal did not come to fruition. And that was a large portion of the reason why, because we want to see additional home ownership in our community. That does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that we don't consider renters a vibrant, necessary part of our community. I would never want to have anyone think that this is a movement to say, oh gosh, we don't want renters in College Park. That's not it at all. It's really providing opportunity for home ownership. And that's where the concern comes from, both the institutional investors buying up a lot of property and looking at Mike's map there. We're sort of right in the midst of that. And also the build to rent subdivision movement. Both of those are very concerning when we talk about the opportunities for families to grow wealth, pass that on to the next generation. And have opportunities to, say, start a small business. I actually, this is my part-time job, as is the case with most of the 537 mayors in the state. Very few of us are actually full-time. So in my other life, I am a mediator and I am an independent contractor. And part of the reason that I was able to take that leap was because I owned my own home. If I were renting, I would not have had that opportunity, and I would not have had the chance to then do a number of other things, like run for office. So even in my own story, I recognize the potential that is there for individuals to be able to have opportunities with home ownership. So it's something that's very near and dear to my heart. We've worked with local banks to try to create programs and roll those programs out into the community so we can have the chance to improve opportunities for home ownership. At the same time, for our own city employees, we actually provide a down payment assistance program as well. But that gets really tough in this climate when interest rates are rising and institutional investors can not only meet asking prices, but exceed them with cash. So as we move forward, I think it's going to be even more difficult for individuals and their families to compete in this market. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that it's really important for our lawmakers to hear what we are thinking about these issues. I had the opportunity through GMA to testify in front of the House Judiciary Committee under the Gold Dome earlier this year. And I heard from several lawmakers how important it was to hear from cities, to hear what was happening on the ground. And even though you wouldn't necessarily think that a city like College Park and a city like Sandy Springs had a ton in common, other than the fact that we both share space in Fulton County, in Sandy Springs, they've got 65% of their residents that are renters. And Mayor Paul and I had the same message in front of the House Judiciary Committee. Don't tie our hands. Give us the opportunity as city leaders, because we know what our community needs. We know it better than the folks who go to Atlanta for a 40-day session. And we understand what's happening on the ground because we are here every single day. You know, I'm getting out and I'm walking our community. I was going to the library this afternoon and swapping out books because I had a couple that were late. But we're here every day. We know the struggles that our community is facing. And I've gotten desperate calls from people saying, my landlord's going to sell because the price is it's one they can't turn down. And I don't know where to go because rents are sky high. And I think what we've seen and what the data shows is that with institutional investors, you're typically seeing above market rates and a much faster eviction process than for your typical mom and pop that might work with someone. And we all know that once you have an eviction on your record, it's almost impossible to get that opportunity for safe, stable, decent housing again. I served for a time as a judge in Fulton County Magistrate Court, dealt with a lot of evictions. And the process it's just grueling for a family. It really, really is, because by the time you reach Magistrate Court, a lot of times the only thing that a judge can say to you is, your defense is insufficient and you've got 7 days to move. And we see that if you don't have housing stability, then you're going to have instability in so many other ways. And if we are building the community that we deserve, then we should be focused on housing stability so kids can be successful in school, so families have food stability, and they have opportunities for workforce development and all those sorts of things. But when you're thinking about where you're going to lay your head next week or next month, a lot of those other things just fall by the wayside. So I really think it starts with housing, and it has to be a concerted effort amongst everyone to be really very cognizant about what's happening out here. Because I saw a question in the chat box about how do we get people to stop calling us to buy our homes. I get those calls all the time. I get the text messages, and they're incessant. And I don't know that you can necessarily stop them, but see that this is a pattern. It's not just you. This is a broad-based approach that can have huge implications, not only for you and your home or your neighbor, but entire communities and in generations moving forward. So we need to think very carefully, is it the quick buck that, somebody's going to give you X amount of dollars to move along? Or does this mean that the next generation is going to be locked into the sort of permanent underclass where they're never going to be able to develop wealth and thrive? I mean, there's huge stakes here. I think I've probably not exceeded my time, but I am happy to answer any questions anyone might have at the end. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to add my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Mayor Motley Broom. That was awesome. I really appreciate your candor based on your experiences, what's going on in your community. Because I think probably some of those shocking numbers that folks really haven't got their heads wrapped around because it's such large, where you think where the natural conversation is always that path to home ownership. And so we would think that a community would not be mostly renters in the perspectives that we have. And so that candidate says, hey, 75, 80, 90% of my folks that live in my community, that support me, that live, love, grow, and thrive, are renting. And so it kind of makes you have to go back and rethink about how well we are instituting our path to ownership initiatives.